January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and it seems like something that can happen in far-off places. You don't think, my town, my block, but it does happen close to home every day. According to the International Labor Organization, at least at any point in 2016, around 25 million people were being trafficked worldwide. Approximately 5 million of them were sexually exploited. Prosecutors say one major offender up until just a few years ago was Backpage.com, a site they say was used for and profited from sex trafficking. Maggy Krell joins me tonight, veteran prosecutor and author of Taking Down Backpage, fighting the world's largest sex trafficker. Maggy, just want to say, the way you wrote this book, I think, really brings people in. And if we can just lay the foundation here of prostitution, of sex work, a lot of times these days, you know, it's kind of put in positive terms of somebody reclaiming something or being powerful. You challenge the notion of this being a victimless issue. You say in the book, quote, with no money and no address, were they merely having sex for money to survive? What led these young women to this brutal place? Where were their families? Who was making money off their misery? And was anyone standing up for them? What's your viewpoint as you go into this book and into this case?
Thanks so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. So this is a difficult topic that really has a lot of nuance. Are there people who are having consensual sex for money out there? Absolutely. That wasn't the focus of the book or the investigation. Unfortunately, many of the people that we encountered, and that I encountered as a prosecutor were really people who were being manipulated or forced into commercial sex work. Many of them were teenagers and minors, so people under 18. Some of the victims were as young as 12 years old.
For people who don't know Backpage, this became your central focus. And a few years ago when this was in flux, I had on someone who said, no, don't take this thing down because that's how we know who's in trouble. That's how we can find them. But you actually had a different point of view. You thought, no, they are profiting post by post off of these girls being trafficked through their website. And you said, this is the heartbeat of this whole system and I got to kill it.
Definitely. I mean, I used Backpage as a prosecutor to find victims. We were able to subpoena records from Backpage in cases and get financial records. Sometimes that was helpful. Sometimes we were able to track phone numbers through Backpage and see that, one trafficker was trafficking multiple victims in multiple cities. We used it sometimes to keep track of gangs that were also involved in sex trafficking. That was a useful tool for law enforcement. But essentially, what I really felt was that Backpage was the biggest, criminal in the ring. And yes, they were a snitch in some ways and that they gave us helpful information, but they were also making more money than anyone else. And they were really at the heart of every single case. They were just continuing to perpetuate this. I mean, we would recover victims and help give them services. And then we would see their picture rolling out on Backpage again. The site just continued to increase their own earnings and really wasn't interested in doing anything to invest in preventing human trafficking on the site.
When you decided, I have to use a novel approach here, that Backpage.com was not passive, like the Communications Decency Act, they're just kind of the website, they're fine, people can put up porn or whatever all the time online. They're saying, no, they're actively working as the trafficker. Were you nervous that that would not land in a court? It's really challenging. I mean, the Communication Decency Act, just to get us all on the same page here, was passed in 1996. And for context, that's before the Trafficking Victims Protection Act was passed, which was in 2000. So, this is a really early law that was enacted to protect the free exchange of ideas on the internet. And I don't think anybody foresaw this, bursting into such a ruthlessly efficient way to traffic children on the internet. We tried to argue that they were creating content. We tried to argue all sorts of various, legal tactics and strategies that I thought made a lot of sense, but they didn't land that well in court. Ultimately, we prevailed on a different angle entirely, and that was prosecuting them for money laundering. This might seem kind of out of left field, but the book focuses on, and you acknowledge this, usually on young women. Are male sex workers in the same boat? Because so much of this is about power dynamics, you know, who's really in charge. Is a 22-year-old male on the prostitution classifieds, is he also being trafficked, or is that different?
No, I mean, I'm glad you're asking that question, because it's important to recognize that anybody can be trafficked. It's not just women, although women and girls are disproportionately impacted, as are women and girls of color. But yes, I mean, there are certainly male victims of sex trafficking. And I'd be careful, you know, a little bit with the language, because we're not talking about sex here when we're talking about sex trafficking. When we're talking about sex trafficking, we're talking about rape. We're talking about people who are being sexually abused against their will for somebody else's financial benefit. And when it's children, so those under 18, the prosecution doesn't even have to prove that it's force or coercion. They just need to prove that it's a minor. So in any case where there's a boy who's under 18, if they are being commercially sexually exploited, that is sex trafficking.
Okay. Take me to the future now. You had this landmark success, and it seemed to have eluded everybody else. Where do we go from here with helping these people? Because you've spent decades in this field, but sex trafficking is not gone. You know, people are still being imported from other countries. People are still going through sexual abuse and poverty and horrible homes, and they're still out there on the street falling into the arms of these people who they think are going to help them, and they're not. What do? We don't have Backpage anymore, but what do we do?
No, you're right. I mean, I never thought that, you know, shutting down one website would end all of human trafficking. Unfortunately, there's not a silver bullet, and there's still a lot of work to be done. I think the case is really important because, one, the message is sent to survivors, you know, that we're not going to allow people to be sold on this despicable site anymore. We're not going to normalize this. But in terms of what we should be doing, I think there's more we can do at the front end. We're seeing, you know, some of the vulnerability factors that you've outlined about kids who are, you know, coming from broken homes or don't have strong support systems being more at risk for human trafficking. I think we can address those things, you know, through more investment in at-risk youth, more investment in schools, mental health, training for teachers, better training for law enforcement to, you know, interact with people in a more trauma-informed way. And just, you know, providing more support at the front end. And then also just exit strategies for the people who are out there. Survivors face so many barriers.
Maggy Krell, your book, Taking Down Backpage, Fighting the World's Largest Sex Trafficker, it really is a fascinating read, but also the thing that will stick with me is the conversations you had with these survivors and with their families who said, we never thought we'd get her back. We didn't know if she was going to live, and that you joined their teams. It's really, really phenomenal work. I hope everybody reads it. Thank you.
Thank you. I know this is a really tough conversation to have, and I am so grateful for you for having it with me. Thank you.
And if you or anyone you love needs some help, reach out to the National Human Trafficking Hotline tonight. The number is on your screen at the top there. Also, if you just want to text Be Free to 233-733, or you can even live chat on humantraffickinghotline.org.